Hey guys! Honestly, I thought turning my desk into a standing desk was going to be way more complicated, but these electric desk legs from ErGear actually made the whole process much easier than I expected. And honestly, I think this is such a good option if you already have a tabletop you like and don't want to spend extra money buying a completely new standing desk. In my case, my original desk was pretty small, so a while ago I bought a larger tabletop and simply placed it on top of the desk I already had. But later I decided to finally make the switch to a standing desk, and instead of getting rid of that tabletop, I ended up using it for this project, and honestly, it worked out really well. So I decided to try just the electric frame to turn it into an adjustable desk. And honestly, after putting everything together and testing it out, I ended up being really impressed with the quality, how solid everything feels, and how good the final setup turned out. The whole idea behind this type of desk is being able to switch between sitting and standing throughout the day without having to replace your entire setup. If you spend a lot of time working at a computer, honestly it makes a huge difference being able to stand up for a while without interrupting your work. And everything here is controlled literally with the push of a button, so switching between positions is super quick and convenient. One of the first things you notice when opening the box is how organized everything is, and right away you can tell the quality is really good. Once you look through the manual, you'll notice the instructions are very clear, and all the screws and tools are properly labeled and organized. The parts themselves feel really high quality. Right from the beginning, the frame feels heavy duty and sturdy. It doesn't feel cheap or flimsy at all. And the white finish honestly looks really clean in person and gives the whole setup a much more modern look. They also offer other color options, so you can choose whichever one matches your workspace best. The first thing I'd recommend doing is taking out all the pieces and organizing everything before starting the assembly process. It just makes the whole installation a lot easier. So first we're going to start putting the main frame together. We're attaching these crossbars to the main legs using these screws right here. You want to make sure this bracket is facing upward because that's where the tabletop will be attached later. And this opening here needs to face outward. Basically, you just line the holes up with the legs, insert the screws, and tighten everything down using the Allen key until the frame feels secure. Honestly, this part is pretty straightforward and you really don't need any extra tools. Then you just repeat the same thing on both sides. After that, we're going to install these T-shaped support pieces that help stabilize everything. This part is also super easy because the pieces already have arrows showing exactly which direction they should face. The thinner side of the bracket goes toward the tabletop while the other side connects to the leg itself. And something I really liked is that these pieces have small guide pins that fit perfectly into the holes on the legs. So everything automatically lines up correctly, which makes tightening everything down much easier. Then you just repeat the same thing on the other side, and at this point you can already start seeing the whole frame coming together. Now we're going to attach the feet. You want to position them like this with the T-supports facing downward. Even though the feet have 5 holes, you actually only need to line up 4 of them and use 4 of these longer screws. Honestly, it's super simple. Just line everything up, screw them in, and tighten them down. Then repeat the exact same thing on the other side. Now we get to one of the most important parts because this is what allows the frame to adjust to different sizes. And honestly, it's what gave me the ability to reuse my tabletop. This adjustable center bar slides right inside these side sections and lets you expand or reduce the width depending on the size of the tabletop you want to use. Here we're installing these 4 screws that will eventually lock the width into place once you decide the final size. But for now, don't tighten them completely yet. I'd recommend first positioning the frame on your tabletop and then fully tightening everything later, so you still have flexibility to adjust the width if needed. Once the legs are fully assembled, it's time to attach everything to the tabletop. Before screwing anything in, I definitely recommend measuring first to make sure the frame is centered properly. I actually had to improvise a little here because I didn't have the perfect tools for this part, but honestly, it still turned out great. Since my screwdriver wasn't the ideal size and it was a little difficult to apply pressure directly onto the screws, I first marked all the screw positions and then used a drill to create small pilot holes. After that, installing the screws became much easier. You're going to place 4 screws on each side and 2 in the center section to fully secure both legs and the adjustable center bar. And at this point you can already see the desk starting to come together really nicely. With the legs now attached in place, we're going to install this rod here, which is the part that actually controls the lifting and lowering motion of the desk. So for this step, I definitely recommend being a little careful not to damage anything. The center section of this rod unscrews so you can extend it and match it perfectly to the width of your desk frame. Then this side with the black plastic piece connects into the motor assembly right here, and the metal side slides directly into the opening on the opposite leg. You'll notice both sides fit perfectly into place. And once you've adjusted everything to the correct width, you simply tighten the center section again to lock everything securely in place. Finally, we install the control panel. And honestly, this is probably the easiest part of the entire setup. It only requires these 2 screws. In my case, the holes on my tabletop already lined up perfectly with the control panel, so I simply aligned everything and tightened the screws. But if your tabletop doesn't already have holes, you can do exactly what I did earlier. Mark the positions, drill small pilot holes, and then install the screws normally. Just be careful not to over-tighten the screws so you don't crack the plastic on the controller. And now we're finally at the last step. These 2 ports are where we connect the motor and the power supply. Now let's see how everything turned out, and most importantly, whether it actually works. We plug the desk into power and immediately you can see the control panel light up, which means everything is working correctly. Now let's test the desk itself. It includes 4 memory presets for different heights, which means you can save your favorite sitting and standing positions and simply press one of the buttons whenever you want to switch between them. To save a height, you just hold the number button down for a few seconds and it stores the position automatically. And if you don't want to use the memory settings, you can manually raise or lower the desk using the up and down arrows. Honestly, I found this feature super convenient, and another thing I really liked is how quiet the motor is while moving the desk up and down. The movement feels really smooth, stable, and controlled. Honestly, I ended up being really impressed with the final result. I was able to reuse the tabletop I already had without replacing my entire desk setup, keep part of my old setup, and save a lot of space at the same time. The frame feels strong and stable. When the desk moves up and down, it doesn't wobble or shake the things I have on top of it. The legs are heavy, the structure feels sturdy, and overall it gives that feeling of a well-built product that's probably going to last a long time. So if you already have a desk and don't want to spend money buying a completely new standing desk, honestly, I think this is an excellent option. The quality feels really good, the installation process was much easier than I expected, and the final result turned out exactly the way I wanted. Overall, I'm really happy with how everything turned out, and honestly, if you've been thinking about upgrading to a standing desk without replacing your whole setup, I definitely think this is worth considering.